When you die and go to hell, I hope you rot.
See you there, bitch.
Should have killed your bitch ass. Everybody knows you're alive. Everybody knows you're alive, huh?
Take your mask off and debate! That's why I'm here!
That has got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not saying what I did was any better.
You're relentless. You stab, you stab, you stab, you stab, you stab until he was dead.
Who is the mass murderer?
Jeremy Christian's crime shocked the nation not only for its brutality but for his unrepentant behavior. On May 26, 2017, Christian boarded a MAX train in Portland, Oregon, and began shouting hateful, racist slurs at two teenage girls. One of them was wearing a hijab, making them the target of his Islamophobic rage. As passengers grew increasingly uncomfortable, three men, Taliesin Namkaimeche, Ricky Best, and Micah Fletcher, stepped forward to intervene. Christian responded with unimaginable violence, pulling out a knife and attacking them. Namkaimeche and Best were fatally stabbed, while Fletcher sustained severe injuries but survived.
And when you die and go to hell, I hope you rot.
See you there, bitch.
No, hey.
Go back to Tennessee, too.
The horror didn't end with Christian's actions on the train. In court, Christian displayed shocking behavior that compounded the grief of the victims' families. He shouted hateful rhetoric, mocked the grieving families, and openly declared that he was proud of what he had done. His courtroom antics showed no hint of remorse or humanity, as he brazenly insulted the very people who had lost their loved ones to his violent outburst. His unrepentant attitude served as a grim reminder of his extremist beliefs and disregard for human life.
What do I tell
Go
you?
back to Tennessee, too.
You can
We don't want you here.
Bye.
All your race-baiting bullshit.
Bye.
You ain't gonna be mayor either, bitch. You ain't gonna be mayor either, bitch. You
Bye.
fucking hoe. You fucking hoe. You fucking up my whole city. George Floyd. George Floyd. I should have killed you, bitch. I should have killed your bitch ass. Everybody knows you're alive. Everybody knows you're alive, huh?
Order in the court. He's gone.
That's the stuff
Thank you, Miss Esther.
Christian's lack of remorse only added to the trauma for the families of his victims. Taliesin Namkaimeche's mother, in a poignant statement, described how her son's bravery and selflessness contrasted so starkly with Christian's hatred and arrogance. The families were forced to relive their pain as Christian's courtroom behavior seemed almost designed to antagonize them. His complete absence of empathy made closure feel like an unattainable goal.
Take your mask off and debate! That's why I'm here! This is my soapbox! Portland, Oregon, the Northwest! We got Supreme Court rulings for our freedom of speech since the 50s and 60s in the Northwest. I don't care if you say you're a patriot and you say I can't come in your punk room. Take your...
Despite his unyielding stance, Christian's actions did not diminish the heroism of the men who stood up to him. Their sacrifices sparked conversations about standing against hate, even in the face of great personal danger. While Christian may have tried to spread fear and chaos, the community's response honored the courage and humanity of those who intervened, ensuring that his actions would not define the legacy of that tragic day. Randall Moore, a senseless murder in Indiana. In 2016, Randall Moore's violent actions claimed the life of Lacey Smith, his ex-girlfriend, in Bloomington, Indiana. The relationship had ended, but Moore could not let go. In a fit of rage, he tracked down Lacey, cornered her, and brutally stabbed her over 20 times. This senseless act of violence ended the life of a young woman with a bright future ahead of her and devastated her family.
Want to say at this time?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Pardon?
Yes, I do. You know, as Treesan left, I started thinking about why she had left and what could have been done differently during this whole process. And then I started going through some totes of hers. I found a tote that had miscellaneous journals, and I mean, I went through every item. I read every single page of every journal that she had ever written since she was a little girl. And the most shocking thing that I came across, and I even shared this with my mom and my sister Misty here, they both read the letter, is a letter that Treesan wrote to her mom when she was a little girl. And it was addressed to her mom. It was sealed, but it was never stamped, never mailed off. And it talks about the sexual abuse that she endured at the hands of her father, Tim Lynch, and how she hated him for it. And these are quotes from the letter. It says, "I was young, only a little girl, so innocent and pure. He is evil and disgusting," and then talks about it. And then she talks about what he actually did to her, and this is over quite a period of time.
When Moore faced justice in court, his lack of remorse was palpable. Lacey's family delivered powerful victim impact statements, describing the agony of their loss and the hole Moore had left in their lives. But Moore remained cold and unresponsive. His expression throughout the trial was devoid of emotion, as if the lives he had destroyed meant nothing to him. For the Smith family, his detachment made their pain even worse, leaving them with no acknowledgement of the humanity lost or the grief they carried.
That has got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not saying what I did was any better, but you know, and then Treesan talks in these journals about how her mom, she went to live with her mom in Texas, and Sheila talks about how her mom and Treesan were so close, which was quite the opposite. I mean, there's so many journal entries. They've got the journals now. They can read through all of them. But Treesan talks about how she went to live with her mom in Texas, and I've got this stuff memorized because I read it so many times. She went to live with her mom in Texas, and her mom was dating a guy named Farron. She was gone days in, days out, 2-3 days at a time. Treesan and her siblings, Kathleen, would call, crying, telling their mom why they wanted her to come home, and her mom would be like, "You guys will be fine, just eat this, I'll be home in another day." Finally, DHS stepped in and said, "Hey, what's going on here?" Treesan wrote in her journals how she lied to the DHS worker and acted like her mom was at work or at the grocery store or things of this nature. And finally, it was too much. Neighbors stepped in, and DHS finally sent her back to live with her father in Garner, Iowa. And then that's when she talks about the physical abuse first, that her dad, I guess one time, there was one incident she really talks about a lot where her dad was taking her to go pick up a new car. She was going to buy a car, and how her dad punched her in the lip and made it bleed, and how he said, "If you say something else, I'm going to hit you again." So she said something else, and he made her lip bleed even more, and she's like, "Now I finally got the proof to go to the authorities and have my dad arrested for abusing me." But she never did come forward with the sexual abuse. My mom and my sister are sitting here in the courtroom. They're a witness to it. It's not like I'm making this up. They read the letter, and they both cried, and I was kind of upset about it. I mean, you know, to do that to your child is pretty sick and disgusting. So, talking about being a good parent, I was a good parent to my sons, both of them. I coached Taylor's Ankeny Little League team to a championship. I coached his AAU basketball team. I went to his classroom and did readings to his class. I've spanked my 11-year-old son one time in 11 years, and that was because he spit at his mom. And I cried for spanking him because I told myself when I was growing up I would never spank my kids no matter what.
Adding to the family's pain was the fact that Moore refused to explain his actions or offer any apology. His silence left them grappling with unanswered questions, making it harder for them to find closure. Lacey's parents spoke of the immeasurable loss of a vibrant young woman whose potential was stolen, while Moore sat in stoic indifference. His unwillingness to acknowledge the weight of his actions felt like an insult to their grief.
My son Levi, I was there through the whole birth, prenatal classes. I mean, I did everything. Me and my wife was so happy about the whole thought of us having a baby, and we told each other no matter what. We went to marriage classes before we got married, and we told each other no matter what, we will fight to the end till there's nothing left to fight for. We would go to counseling, whatever happened, we would never just give up, because she talks in her journals about how her mom just walked out on her dad with no forewarning, no nothing, and how it ruined her life, and she hated her mom for that. and that's the reason she would never walk out on a relationship. Well, the day that Tracy Ann died, me and her had a conversation, and Tracy Ann, the first thing I told Tracy Ann, I gave her the letter that I wrote for her that talks about the postpartum depression and the things that was going on in her head that I didn't understand as a man because I didn't know what postpartum was. I thought the reason my wife was bitchy and...
The case highlighted a pervasive issue in intimate partner violence, where control and possessiveness often escalate to fatal outcomes. For Lacey's family, advocating for awareness and support for victims of domestic violence became a way to channel their grief. While Moore's lack of remorse underscored his inhumanity, the family's determination to honor Lacey's memory demonstrated their refusal to let his coldness define her story. Camia Gamet, a monster in court. Camia Gamet's crime is remembered for its unrelenting brutality and her chilling behavior in court. In 2014, in Jackson, Michigan, Gamet murdered her boyfriend, Marcel Hill, in a prolonged and violent attack. Using a frying pan, knives, and other objects, she beat Hill to death in an act of sustained cruelty. Hill's family described his murder as a horrific end to a loving and kind man's life, emphasizing the torment he must have endured.
Probably in some kind of domestic, ultimately hit him in the head so hard with a pan that you actually caved in the front of his skull, and then you stabbed him no less than 12 times. And you know what? I was the only one in the courtroom that knew what kind of knife that was. And it was a big old long fillet knife. Because I used it to fillet pike and muskie and salmon. And I'll tell you, you gutted him like a fish in that apartment too. You were relentless. You stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed until he was dead.
What made the case even more infamous was Gamet's behavior during her trial. Throughout the proceedings, she showed no signs of remorse. She laughed, rolled her eyes, and made sarcastic comments while Hill's family shared their heart-wrenching stories about their loss. Her dismissive and mocking demeanor shocked the court and the public. The presiding judge, clearly disturbed, described her as a monster and condemned her actions and attitude in scathing terms. Her complete lack of empathy and blatant disregard for the victim's pain became a focal point of the trial.
You didn't think he was an intruder? You know, maybe one stab wound, okay, maybe that's self-defense. But you put in 11 more to make sure he was good and dead. So I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, and if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair. You have 42 days to appeal my sentence. I think I've legally erred anyway.
Marcel Hill's family expressed their deep pain not only at the loss of their loved one, but also at the lack of justice they felt when Gamet's behavior went unchecked during parts of the trial. They struggled with the knowledge that Hill's final moments were filled with suffering, compounded by Gamet's apparent indifference to the value of his life. The courtroom became a secondary battleground as they tried to make their voices heard amid Gamet's mockery. For Hill's family, the trial was not just about seeking justice, but about preserving Marcel's dignity in the face of such cruelty. They used their statements to emphasize his kindness, love, and the void left in their lives. Though Gamet's lack of remorse could not be undone, the family's determination to celebrate Hill's life became a testament to their resilience, ensuring his memory would not be overshadowed by Gamet's callousness. Keith Allen Ferguson, the family destroyer. Keith Allen Ferguson's crime was a betrayal of the deepest kind. In 2011, Ferguson murdered his wife, Rebecca, and two of their sons, Caleb and Isaac, in their small Texas home. The crime sent shockwaves through their community, as Ferguson, once a family man, committed one of the most heinous acts imaginable, murdering his own family. The details of the crime painted a picture of rage and devastation. But what struck observers most was Ferguson's behavior afterward.
And with that penalty denied, how do you wish to plead to these two charges?
Guilty.
Keith Ferguson admitted to killing his estranged wife, Tiffany Ferguson, and father-in-law, James Weber, in Kalkaska County Court on Tuesday morning.
When brought to trial, Ferguson showed no remorse for his actions. He sat stoically, refusing to make eye contact with the victim's surviving relatives or offer any apology. His cold, unfeeling demeanor stood in stark contrast to the emotional outpouring from Rebecca's and the children's loved ones, who described the depth of their loss. Ferguson's silence and lack of accountability only deepened their wounds. For the surviving family members, his behavior was a cruel reminder of the man who had taken so much from them without even a hint of regret.
I'm not getting into any detail of what happened.
If you want to be guilty, you have to say what you did.
I'm not saying all right? Because of the respect and the safety of my children, I'm not saying nothing, because they're gonna see this. They don't need to hear that. Understand what I'm saying? You know, let's just make this painless and not. Give me my 100 years or whatever, and give me the out of here.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well do it.
Ferguson continued to argue with the judge.
You understand me? I'm not doing this in front of these stupid cameras and these.
The aftermath of Ferguson's crime left an indelible mark on his community. Friends and neighbors who had once seen him as a devoted father and husband grappled with the stark reality of his actions. The surviving relatives of Rebecca and her sons described the crime as a betrayal that felt deeply personal, leaving them with a fractured sense of trust and safety.
All right. Don't touch me.
Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, Ferguson maintained his indifferent stance, a choice that denied the victims' families the closure they so desperately sought. His refusal to express remorse was not only a rejection of accountability, but also an extension of the harm he inflicted. For Rebecca's family, their strength came from ensuring that the memories of her and her sons endured, refusing to let Ferguson's callousness overshadow their lives and legacies. Ronnie O'Neill III, a trial filled with chaos. Ronnie O'Neill III's crime was one of unimaginable brutality and horror. In March 2018, in Riverview, Florida, O'Neill murdered his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and their 9-year-old daughter, Ron Nevea, in a gruesome attack. O'Neill also attempted to kill his 8-year-old son, who miraculously survived being stabbed and set on fire. The crime was horrific enough, but O'Neill's behavior during his trial added a new layer of cruelty.
By the time it's all said and done, you will see who is the mass murderers. In Tampa Bay.
Representing himself in court, O'Neill turned the trial into a chaotic spectacle. He shouted at witnesses, interrupted the proceedings, and delivered incoherent rants. He even cross-examined his son, forcing the child to recount the traumatic events in front of the court. O'Neill never showed an ounce of remorse, instead attempting to paint himself as a victim of a conspiracy. For Kenyatta's family, the trial was a nightmare, a horrifying reliving of their loss, while O'Neill continued to manipulate and mock the justice system. His behavior left an indelible mark on those seeking justice for the lives he had destroyed.
By the time it's all said and done, you will see who is the mass murderers. In Tampa Bay.
Kenyatta Barron's family members described the trial as a twisted stage for O'Neill's antics, which overshadowed the gravity of his crimes. For them, his lack of remorse was a cruel insult to the memory of their loved ones. They had already endured the horror of his actions, and now they were forced to witness his continued disregard for their pain.
The evidence will also show that he was present, but does not remember accurately or consistently what happened for many reasons, making him unreliable when it comes to the actual facts. He also has been diagnosed with PTSD, as he should be, because this is a very traumatic thing that he went through. He also was diagnosed with major depression disorder, intermittent confusion, and delirium. The evidence is going to show, the evidence and testimony will show that Ronnie Blair, formerly known as Ronnie O'Neal IV, may have been coached on what to say by family members.
Objection to argument.
And or law
Hold on. I will overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. O'Neal, again, jury, this is what both sides believe the evidence is going to show. All right? And again, you will be the ultimate determiner of what the facts are.
Despite his attempts to distort the proceedings, the evidence against O'Neal was overwhelming. The court's eventual decision brought some semblance of justice, but it could not erase the emotional scars left on the survivors. For Kenyatta's family, their strength came from their love for her and Ron Nevaeh. Their determination to honor their memories served as a powerful counterpoint to O'Neal's cruelty, proving that even in the face of such evil, love and resilience could endure.